Good morning, Barbadians. I've remarked on several occasions on our stellar performance as a country in tackling this COVID-19 pandemic. And it is with pride and humility that I do so again today. Barbadians, we have done well, so much so that we have been listed among the top 15 best recovering countries worldwide by an article that came out this week. In fact, only 2 Caribbean countries made the list, Dominica and of course Barbados. But we have more good news today, and before I go further into my speech, I would like to be able to invite our Minister of Health, the Honorable Jeffrey BOSTIC, who has some good news for us. Jeffrey?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Good morning. The good news is that we are now on day 35 without any local transmission of COVID-19. And even better news, all persons who were in isolation have been discharged, so there are no confirmed cases that we are still treating at the isolation facility at Harrison Point. Also important is the fact that all persons who were repatriated on the flights from the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada have been discharged from quarantine. And this is indeed good news. But this good news did not happen just like that. In spite of the support, the financial and other support and the leadership of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, in spite of the efforts of the Permanent Secretary, the Chief Medical Officer, and the hard-working staff at the Ministry of Health and Wellness, in spite of the all-of-government approach, we could not have reached this point unless we had the cooperation and the support of the ordinary Barbadian man and woman, and all other persons residing here. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what really made the difference. You collaborated. We asked you to start and embark rather on a journey that you had never taken before for the most part. Most Barbadians never experienced a curfew. Most Barbadians never experienced isolation, solitude, deprivation. All of these were required on a level of discipline for us to be able to reach where we have reached today. So I'm saying a big thank you on behalf of the government of Barbados to all Barbadians for your cooperation and your support. If I could recall, for example, those persons who would have entered Barbados returning home prior to the mandatory quarantine order for the United States, we obviously did not capture those persons because the order was not issued at that time. But we put out a public service announcement, and people responded overwhelmingly. And through that response, we were able then to test persons who we would have missed, some of them who tested positive. But because of the cooperation, we were able to isolate them, do the contact tracing, and contain that situation. And so I say to all Barbadians and residents today, this is one of those situations where our destiny is not in the hands of any foreign government. Our destiny is in our hands. When we come together, when we work together, when we cooperate, we will be strong. And so I say, we've done well, but let us not become complacent. Let us continue to be our brother's keeper and look out for each other. And I am sure we can ride through any storm that comes our way.
Thank you very much. I'm always going to call him my colonel. And he has led us to this great achievement. But as he has said, this is testimony to the will, discipline, and commitment of Barbadian people. Not only as the leader of this great island nation, but as a proud Barbadian, I reiterate that we as a people have been up to the task in every respect. The health authorities, the frontline workers, the essential services, the social partnership, you in the media, the police, everyone has played their part. Those on the borders, as you will recognize, we never fully closed. All have been integral to the success we have had thus far in tackling this pandemic. And more so, each and every Bajan in every house and in every community. We quickly buckled down and we adapted to our new normal with very little fuss and disturbance. We did what we have done for generations. We faced our challenges head on. We talked through our national concerns and the varying opinions. We supported each other, especially those most vulnerable in our society, and shown true resolve and resilience. These are the characteristics, my friends, that have sustained us in the past, and it is these same aspects of the Barbadian personality that are doing so again at this time. And inasmuch as we have been successful in the battle against COVID-19 thus far, it is imperative that we take stock and recognize that we are now at a juncture of yet another challenge. But I am confident that together we will once again manage, monitor, and overcome this crossroad, doing not only what is necessary, but that which is in the very best interest of our beloved Barbados. I speak, my friends, of the prospect of relaxing our border restrictions to allow for commercial travel, scheduled commercial air travel, of course, under the strictest of health protocols and guidelines. I know that there are several questions, and we're prepared to answer them all frontally and honestly. The first being, why now? This pandemic has been global and has served tourism a severely detrimental blow, and Barbados particularly so, since it is by far our most important revenue driver. Likewise, similarly in the Eastern Caribbean and the Northern Caribbean. There is not a single aspect of our daily lives that does not benefit from tourism's contribution to the economy, whether it is in expanded food production, whether it is in the taxi drivers, the vendors, whatever. A thriving tourism sector allows us to enjoy many of the things that we take for granted. A thriving tourism sector ensures that tens of thousands of Barbadians are employed and that their households are able to function, that small and medium-sized ancillary entities can remain open, that the cultural practitioners can create and perform and survive and offer the fruits of their talents and skills. For the attractions, the same thing. Tourism, my friends, as we were taught, truly is our core business. While we are keeping our head above water financially, and that is not a situation that can be maintained with our current tight border controls, we need to start making tough but cautious decisions while balancing our need for the much-needed income along with maintaining the security and the safety of all Barbadians. This brings me, therefore, to the question that I know many of you are pondering. Are we ready? The reality is that we cannot afford to keep our borders closed indefinitely. However, I dare say that in examining our handling of the pandemic to date, we've been able to keep our number of cases and deaths, as we have said, at a manageable level, while at the same time keeping you informed and taking care of the most vulnerable, as well as providing safety nets for those of you who have been out of work at the moment. To my mind, these are all pointers that indicate that we can create and implement a plan to successfully open this country for scheduled commercial air travel. Indeed, we met last week at the gymnasium, all of the social partnership, all of the Jobs and Investment Advisory Council, members of the Social Justice Committee, and when asked the question, was there any objection to us moving to the next step, there was effectively no opposition. We believe then, therefore, that our duty was to go and to work with the Ministry of Health, with the head of the COVID monitoring unit, Mr. Chapman, with tourism, with the AG and others who were already meeting before, and to determine how best we could prepare. Similarly, we believe, therefore, that Barbados is ready to take the next step, engaging in social activities that also balance and enrich our lives, activities that will allow us to safely, as Bajans, enjoy the experiences, the goods and services offered by our hotels through staycations, our restaurants, our bars and other places of entertainments, as well as our shops and our stores. We've been inside. I think Peter Ram has a song now called Outside. We've been inside, put up, as the old people would say, since March. And during that time, most of us have demonstrated that we take COVID-19 seriously. And we've followed and we continue to follow the guidelines and adhere to the protocols. Jeffrey thanked you. I keep thanking you. We've largely returned to work over the course of the last month without any major problems. We're practicing social distancing and doing everything to protect ourselves in the workplace. And now that we're back to working hard, we can now etch out a little time to play. We understand that there are those who will have concerns, but at no time will human life become secondary to our economy. I want to repeat myself. At no time will human life become secondary to our economy. We are not that person, those people. We don't do it that way. So that you will ask now, what does the plan look like? I want to share with you that any plan to welcome visitors to our shores again and to allow tourism-based establishments to reopen must and will put the safety of Barbadians first. I've said it too many times. It is non-negotiable. To be able to live up to that commitment will require practical, efficient protocols, consistent flows of communication from the government to you, as we have been doing, and just as important, from you to the government agencies, so that we can effectively monitor our progress and at the same time solving any issues as they occur. We want to hear from those of you who have serious concerns for a number of reasons. Together, we can work through these concerns as we have been doing over the last few months to ensure that those who have concerns are as comfortable as they could be, and by extension, that any plan and protocols will effectively take your considerations into concern where possible, solve them, and if not, explain why they may not be solved. That is the duty of the COVID monitoring unit that we are establishing under the leadership of Mr. Ronald Chapman, whose substantive position is Deputy Chief of the Environmental Health Department. The tourism, and we are also including in his unit officers from the Ministry of Labour, so that the 10 of them will be able to go and look, monitor, and in some instances approve, as you will hear from the AG, what you may do going forward. There is also the tourism reboot exercise, as we are informally calling it at this time, and KERRIE will speak more to this. We invited, over the course of the last few weeks, ideas and participation of a wide and varied think tank of creative Barbadian minds, not just in tourism, but also from across the rest of the society, in order to be able to help us do and to answer another question. What does the best of Barbados look like, feel like, sound like, taste like? Because this is our perfect opportunity, Bajans, to put in the time and the effort to rebrand and reboot our tourism sector and to engender a renewed national respect and appreciation for tourism. From public education and training, as you've heard me say, through the National Training Initiative, to branding and signage, which we need to improve, to the attractions and the entertainment activities. We've had very little live entertainment in this country, and coming from someone who used to manage a band with John King, that is of great regret to me. To a national cleanup and beautification campaign. You've heard me speak about this over and over since Independence Day last year. All of these will be reviewed and refreshed under our Tourism Reboot program. I especially look forward to welcoming Bajan nationals residing abroad. This is your home, and it will always be your home, because this is where your Bajan essence was born, and you are always welcome to come home here. To that extent, in this same room last Saturday, I met with hundreds of Barbadians across the diaspora and was exceedingly happy to do so and to answer some of their questions and concerns about how we're doing, where we're going, all of the things that would cause them to wonder. And we haven't forgotten the fact that many of you, particularly in the US and Canada and the UK, have borne the brunt of COVID in those countries. So we want you to think of coming home and to be able to allow yourself to refresh and regenerate. The new tourism thrust as well will embody and reflect 3 basic pillars of excellence. I want us to remember this. The first is national pride. If we create the best Barbados for us, then we have to be proud to share the best of us with the world. I keep making the point that the first tourist is a Bajan. We have to be proud of what we have here. When people land here, they ask where to go, what you do here. Those are the things. And if we don't know our island, and if we don't know the standards that we want, and if we don't want people to be, if we don't want ourselves to be treated badly, we can't treat others badly. And one of the things that COVID has done has taught us the importance of tourism and visitors to our way of life. 2, the pursuit of excellence. That is not just about tourism. That has to be about Barbados. So pride is one thing, but pride that is not buttressed by a commitment to do the best, to be the best, will mean nothing. It will be an empty brand. And therefore, we must consistently give our best when you go to work, every time, every day. Don't be clock watching now, because you now know with COVID how important a job is. Don't be looking to see how you can get out and go. If you could do it late in the evening, do it late in the evening. Part of the problem we have faced for the last few decades, but in particular the last decade, is that we know we need to do more and better to raise our productivity. People got choices, you know. People got choices. And that's what we're realizing all the time. And remember this, especially with the conversations that are floating around. The best service that we can give is rooted in the Bible, is rooted in the best of ourselves. It is not servitude. Saying good morning, saying thank you, helping people to find their way, helping people to do things that they don't know how to do when they visit our country, helping people who belong here and who live in our neighborhood and whose parents might be out and they have nobody to turn to. This is who we are. And as much as others will try to turn that phrase, believe you me, it will not intimidate us, because we know this is who we are. And that is how we have succeeded. How does a small nation of 166 square miles get to where it wants to get if our grandparents and our great-grandparents didn't reflect the best in them, didn't work literally till their hands and fingers were hurting them, till they had to manage 2 and 3 jobs, till they were planting crops in the backyard, till they were raising stock that you had to help carry out, many of us. And that is what made us move up and up and up. They were not frightened to be polite to each other. They were not frightened to treat each other well. They were not frightened to talk with one another and to be able to say to each other that we can make it and we don't have to be condemned into a position where we were born because we were brought here and left in poverty. And we have shown that through education, through working together, through solidarity and partnership, through caring for each other, we can make it. The third point is universal tolerance. There has to be a general and genuine tolerance and respect for all mankind, and the expectation that we too are deserving of the same tolerance and respect. So I want you to ponder on these things, and I want us to continue to have these conversations on brass tacks and CBC, in the corridors, in the shops, in the supermarkets, on the beach in the morning, in the evening. This is the conversations on the 2nd of January from this room. I told us that we need to set a mission of being world class. And while COVID is a bump, COVID has also taught us why that target, that mission of setting for ourselves to be world class in the next 7 years is even more important, because it's in doing that we keep ourselves at the top of the pile for people to say, I want to go there, I want to be part and parcel of the Barbadian experience. So what happens next? The protocols governing visitor arrivals and tourism-related activity will be shared with all Barbadians. Barbados will get itself ready to welcome visitors And we will start with the reopening of restaurants and hotels and attractions and entertainment centers and sports, not merely for our citizens to enjoy, but eventually for the visitors who will be coming back gradually to experience our culture and hospitality. The local campaigns will outline for us the importance of tourism and our reimagined tourism product. The tourism authorities will launch the new Barbados Tourism Brand Identity campaign to all the world, inviting all to come see, taste, and experience their perfect home away from home. And everything possible will be put in place to welcome visitors warmly, as we know how to do, safely, as we have shown over the last 3 months we can do, and to ensure that all their interactions with Barbadians are not just warm and friendly, but, as I said, safe and secure. We have to make this, my friends, this decision in the best interests of our country. My cabinet and I commit to protecting you, protecting jobs, and protecting livelihoods. There can be no Barbados to experience without Barbadians. And in light of the level of maturity and responsibility that I have seen you exhibit over the last 3 months, we think, as a government, that it is safe for us to get on with our lives as we did before COVID-19 reached our shores. Cautiously, but get on. It is time to reward good behavior, but very carefully so, as we fully understand the consequences of being reckless and irresponsible, and you see them on television elsewhere. Very soon, the protocols governing our ability to socialize, I will announce, and we will implement. Rest assured that we will be monitoring them, as I said, and I have no fear of repeating myself, to make sure that people understand that you must comply with them all of the time. Brake and accelerator. Brake and accelerator. Remember them 3 words. The more we comply with them, the more we can return to Lyman and Oystins, going to the Gap. I see some photographers smiling already. Going to Baxter's Road, going to the Lime Bar in my constituency behind the stadium. If you don't know about it, come out there. Going to Lemon Arbor in St. John, going to Martins Bay, or any of the popular spots across the country that not only do we patronize, but we tell people about. Wendy's in KERRIE's constituency, all of them. We can go out, we may go to a karaoke shop line, we can go out with family and friends. We can take in exciting performances, viewing and buying the works of some of the local artists who need to live, who need to support their families, and to the artisans. In other words, enjoying life the Bajan way, as we know how to do. We, yes, recognize our dependency on tourism. But when the tourists disappeared, who we had? Each other. And that's why I say the first tourist is a Bajan. No economy will survive if its people do not have the spending power. So as we go about our daily lives, I urge all of us to remember that every dollar we spend in Oystins, or at the restaurant, or in a supermarket, or in a village shop, or boutique, or in the gym, or in a pharmacy, or a street vendor, means that another Bajan remains employed, allowing each of us to keep and to feed our families and to keep this economy afloat. Today is not the day for me to discuss the economy, and I'll do that another time. But throughout this pandemic, what has been important is that solidarity, as Jeffrey just said, of being our brother's keeper and our sister's keeper. And we must never let go of that. So as we remain sensible and responsible as we mix, let us also resolve to do the same to keep as many workers employed, and by extension the families fed, by supporting one another through civic enterprise. We are in this together. And I want to remind you, as I've always said, what? Many hands make light work. It is against this backdrop, therefore, this morning, that I would like to announce the following adjustments to the existing lockdown or restrictions regime. Effective Wednesday, July 1st, there will be no further curfew on weekends in Barbados. All curfew restrictions, therefore, are now being removed. Physical distancing will now be 1 meter. That is just about 3 feet, or in other words, outside of the stretch of your arms and hands. On the details of some of these other restrictions, I now invite the Attorney General to speak and carry us through some of them, as he has been doing wonderfully so for us over the course of the last 3 months. AG?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Good morning, Barbados. We are now about to implement COVID Directive number 8. It doesn't seem as though we've come so far from March 28th, when we first started our shutdown. At that point, the Prime Minister asked me to take charge of all of the governance issues, and as she has reinforced, we are in this wonderful position today because of your hard work, and I want to thank you for cooperating so enthusiastically with the members of the Royal Barbados Police Force and all of the agencies that had the responsibility of the day-to-day monitoring. As we've gone through the last 7 COVID directives, you will notice that we have gradually, after consultation, eased the restrictions on Barbadians. We are therefore now at the point when there are very, very few things left to relax, and therefore I don't have to spend much time at this podium. On the last occasion the Prime Minister spoke with you, she gave the assurance that we needed a little more time to get our daycare centres fully trained and prepared to deal with the intricacies of COVID protocols in the context of dealing with toddlers. I am pleased to say that that work has now been complete, and therefore when the new COVID directive starts at midnight on Monday night, all daycare centres will be allowed to reopen to full functionality. In addition to that, we feel that we are now at the point where we can allow sporting events to take place with spectators. Now, obviously, we will still have stringent protocols in relation to spectators enjoying those events, but they will largely be limited to physical distancing and sanitizing, things of that sort. Obviously, for indoor sporting activities, there will be density requirements to consider, but once more, our avid fans can go out, enjoy a game of cricket, watch a game of basketball, football, road tennis, and the like. In relation to entertainment and public events, those events were limited to a maximum capacity of 250 persons. After consulting extensively with the health authorities, we've decided that we will increase that limit to 500. So for public and entertainment events, we can now move, you will now be able to move to 500. Of course, the protocols are important. So if the event is going to be in an indoor facility, we're going to insist that the protocols in relation to distancing, as are currently obtaining in churches and so on, will be applied. If it's an outdoor facility, then of course there'll be more flexibility, but still physical distancing. At all events, masks will have to be worn. With effect from the 15th of July, we are prepared to consider, with the support of the COVID-19 monitoring unit, allowing the hosting of events in excess of 500 people, so that from the 15th of July, it will be possible for you, so long as the COVID monitoring unit certifies that they're satisfied with the arrangements that are put in place, for you to host events of in excess of 500 people. I know many of you will be looking forward to that kind of thing. The COVID monitoring unit is in place really because, as you will have noticed, we've ceded more and more of the executive authority over these matters to the public service, and therefore this unit is going to be responsible for many of the things that I would have had to take charge of as Attorney General. The one final thing that I would like to mention relates to visitation to the hospital and nursing homes. We know that many of you are feeling somewhat distressed at not being able to visit with your family in the way that you would have liked. So far, we've limited the visiting to 1 person at a time for nursing homes and the hospital. We had hoped to be in a position to relax that, but after thorough consultation with the medical facilities and the owners and and interested parties in relation to the senior citizens' homes. The recommendation has been made to us that we should maintain the status quo going forward until further notice. And therefore, for hospital visits and for visits to nursing homes and senior citizens' homes, we will maintain the current position, which is one person at a time. Thank you very much for working with us, and with your continued support, we look forward to the point where not only will we not have any curfew at all, but we will no longer need the curfew directive. One final point before I hand back over to the Prime Minister. On Tuesday night, Parliament determined that we would extend the state of emergency until the end of August. Many of you will be wondering if we've lifted the curfew and if we have more or less released so many things, why do we still feel that we are in a state of emergency? I think the reason is obvious. The importance of the state of emergency, from my point of view, is that it allows us to maintain our restrictions in relation to the physical protocols, in relation to the sanitizing. It is the basis on which the COVID monitoring unit will work. They will work within the context of a state of emergency caused by the pandemic. And even though we have no cases at this point in time and we feel that we are COVID-free, from a point of view of governance, it is still going to be important for us to ensure that those protocols, physical distancing, things of that sort will remain in place. In relation to churches, Prime Minister, I think you'll be happy to know that we've removed the limit for services, so services can now go on for as long as the congregation will enjoy it, and the other protocols will remain, but the specifics will come out again in our new directive. We've relaxed a number of things, so we will be allowing baptisms once more, so long as the individuals wear gloves. In relation to the COVID monitoring unit, we are putting the public service announcements in place. It will have a dedicated email address and phone number, and those things we put out to you through GIS. Thank you once more for your cooperation, and we look forward to seeing the rest of this through safely. Prime Minister?
Thank you very much, AG. Of course, one of the other major reasons for the public health emergency remaining, let us not forget that our dear friends in the Cuban government have allowed us to have here virtually 100 nurses and medical practitioners that have to remain, that are remaining to continue to help us. Even though we are happy today, we understand that we live in a world where last Sunday still had the largest increase of COVID cases since the start of COVID. So that we are conscious that this is a delicate balancing act, and therefore, why do we have comfort that we can do this easily? Because one, we've shown that we can work together. Two, on March 28th, we did not have Harrison's Point finished. We did not have the equipment and the ventilators. They were on their way here. They arrived within the month of April. We were able to fully stand up that. The Cuban nurses came in the month of April. So we are far, far, far better off today to be able to manage what comes our way. We have the 38 primary ICU beds, the 40 secondary ICU beds, 120 quarantine and isolation beds, at what they call tertiary care at Harrison's Point. We continue to have the almost 200 beds at Paragon for quarantine, and Minister Simmons will also ensure that other arrangements, as they have been doing. Sugarcane Club was always available to persons who wanted to pay to quarantine. We've had one or two other hotels included in that. So we are far, far better off to face the decisions that we know are going. So that on this matter of fueling business, again, I want to say this. Ridiculous prices for goods and services will achieve nothing else but to chase people away. People are still hurting, as we all know, with the loss of jobs. And we have to meet the consumers halfway. And I'm talking to Barbadian businessmen, large, small, now. Why are you trying to sell 3 for $12 when 4 for $10 is we're going to move the product and let you be able to put new product in shipment tomorrow? You got to study sense. And if we can do that, and remember what the old people say, a little with content is great gain. So if we can do that, we're not going to make no profits this year. It is about keeping people's heads above water and everybody doing a little to make sure that they're living. And that's why when you come in, if you ask me for brandy, I can tell you I'm drinking 4 for 10. That's the truth, because that's the only way that we can get through this entire thing. As it relates now to the matter of opening Barbados to regular commercial air traffic. Effective July 12th, scheduled commercial air traffic will resume at the Grantley Adams International Airport. And we will start with it coming from Canada, with the arrival of Air Canada, which will be coming initially twice per week on Thursdays and Sundays. On the 18th of July, British Airways will resume flights into Barbados from Gatwick, London, and these flights will initially come at least once per week, but will also respond to demand. Discussions, therefore, will continue with them. On the 25th of July, we hope that JetBlue will come from JFK, and that is intended to be 4 times per week. I want to be frank with you and tell you that we had originally expected to start on July 2nd with American Airlines out of Miami, but I don't think I need to explain to you why that will now be August 5th, 2020. We will continue to take a risk-based approach to the protection of our country, our people, and our visitors. Similarly, Virgin will resume flights on August 1st, and those are scheduled to come once per week initially until they ramp back up their full schedule for the winter in October. I now want to ask Minister KERRIE Simmons to build on that, and as I do so, with respect to Caribbean flights, let me say that it is anticipated that CAL will resume in mid-July. The shareholders of LIAT are having an informal caucus tomorrow in order to be able to determine the future of LIAT, and we will be in a better position to speak to that over the course of the next few weeks as to how we will proceed. Suffice it to say, though, that we are committed to ensuring that there will be effective, affordable, reliable and safe interregional travel as part of the product mix starting from July. Minister?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Prime Minister indicated as part of her core theme today, the refueling of business cannot be done without also having a clear mind and understanding towards the health of workers and the health of Barbadian citizens. And so therefore this process of reopening, and I use that word advisedly, but this process has to be done hand in hand between the interests of business and the interests of people. Now I don't want to belabor the point, but we never closed the airport. The airport has always been open for the purposes of repatriation flights. It has always been open for the purposes of cargo being flown into the island. And so therefore, what we are doing is recommencing scheduled commercial traffic. And as you will recall, when last I spoke to you from this place, scheduled commercial traffic came to be suspended after we had to take certain steps with regard to the first case of COVID on the island and implementing a 14-day quarantine. Now, the question as we go forward is one of the protocols which ensure the safety of the workers at the airport and obviously the safety of the Barbadian citizens. That has been the first priority of the ministry, working in collaboration with the Ministry of Health officials. And I'm happy to say that we've been able to work through a number of protocols. The first of them would have been the protocols for the accommodation sector, and they have been settled with the Barbados Workers Union and the National Union of Public Workers. We've done protocols for the attractions, and we've done protocols, we are working on, protocols for the villa accommodation as well. And we are now at a stage where we have settled the protocols for people arriving into the country. And that is perhaps the most important of the processes. Before you embark on your journey to Barbados, you must, within 72 hours of the commencement of travel, do a COVID-19 PCR antigen test. And that test must be then accredited by a laboratory which will be or the accreditation of the laboratory will be by the Ministry of Health and Wellness here. The standard of that test must be ISO or CAP, or in the case of the United Kingdom, UKAS compliant, or the equivalent thereof. And the specifics of that will obviously be made available as we do the public education and awareness program. After passing that test, you will obviously get a certificate that indicates that you're COVID negative, and you're expected to fill out online your ED card, which will also carry within it, the ED card now will have a new look, and it will carry within it a number of questions which relate specifically to issues relating to personal health and symptoms. And once you have filled that out online and submitted it, you get an exchange sent back to your email address. Most people will walk with it on their telephone, a barcode, which once you arrive into the island and you have your certificate indicating that you've passed the COVID-19 test, you just clear immigration and you are allowed into Barbados. Now, I want to emphasize one thing in particular, and that is that we are managing risk. And there is no perfect system. We accept that there has to be a management of the risk, and to make sure that we minimize the risk of exposure to people in Barbados with COVID as best as and as practically as is humanly possible. There will obviously be instances where people may not have been able to get the COVID-19 test within 72 hours prior to departure from wherever they're coming from to Barbados. And one very simple example of that was made manifest on CNN this morning, simply because of the fact that testing facilities are so far apart in the United States and so difficult to access. In circumstances where people arrive here without having the COVID-19 test, they must do one at the airport. There will be a facility made available in the Concord experience. During the course of this week, the head of the COVID-19 unit and myself would have paid some visits there, and we are working through the logistics for the reactivation of the Concord Center and setting it up as a location from which we can do tests. In addition to that, however, we are mindful of the fact that, say, for example, once we come to a Saturday during the month of August, we will have flights coming in from the United Kingdom, British Airways, and Virgin Atlantic, which together may amount to over 500 people, assuming that they're full. And there, therefore, will be a backup. And one of the things that we have explored has been identifying a number of hotels, probably not more than 4 at the maximum, which will be satellite testing facilities. I do not wish to name those properties now, but the reality is that discussion has taken place with some owners, and the Ministry of Health and Wellness must also finally satisfy themselves before we recommence scheduled commercial travel that those testing facilities that we are proposing are in fact adequate. And from those places, people will be able at their own expense to get a test done and spend some time on property while they await the test results. Obviously, if you fail a COVID-19 test, then that which has always happened before will continue to happen. You will be taken into isolation for the care to be given to you there. Beyond that, the protocols will require that all persons entering Barbados travel to Barbados wearing face masks, that you be tested for temperature checks on arrival. There is a facility that has now been installed at Grantley Adams Airport, which makes that considerably more easy because you just walk through and your temperature will be taken automatically. So we will no longer have to have the handheld guns and so on in order to make that happen. And thereafter, once you are able to satisfy immigration, port health, and customs, you're free to go on your way. For those people, as I said before, who present with a problem or who are recognized to have a problem, then they will obviously be taken aside and subjected to the necessary questions and subsequent testing just to make sure that all those situations are properly taken care of. I think it is important also to make the point that there is a standard of 72 hours in advance of travel that we are applying. But we are facing a gradual reopening of the travel to Barbados. We are doing this in a set of circumstances where we are coming from zero against a backdrop where at this time of the year last year, for example, using the UK market again, we would have had 5 flights weekly, or in some cases 7 flights weekly, depending on the airline, from the United Kingdom. So as we begin, we're beginning with a 1 flight weekly. There's a substantial diminution of business. And we have, therefore, to go slowly and to make sure that we dot I's and cross T's along the way, and also to make sure that we take every possible precaution as we go forward in order to protect people's personal health and safety. The passage through the airport having been granted, there's obviously the question of those people who may still need to be quarantined. Now, there are different categories of countries. Some countries are treated by the Ministry of Health and Wellness as being more high risk. Others are treated as being medium risk. Others are very low risk. The more high-risk ones, I think you will know and recognize from international news, and that is basically decided against the criteria of the amount of new cases you're getting, the amount of deaths you're getting, and the rate of those deaths. And obviously, the low risk is the exact opposite end of the spectrum. Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, CARICOM generally, is treated as a set of low-risk countries. The exception that I want to make clear to the public is that with regard to the low-risk countries, in particular CARICOM, the requirement for travel, before travel having to have a test within 72 hours will not be in place. That will be 1 week before travel. And that is simply because of the fact that there is a capacity issue in the Eastern Caribbean that we have to be candid about as well. Every country in the Eastern Caribbean does not have the ability to access a testing facility within its borders. So a test in laboratory within its borders. The test is done, and then it has to be sent to the CARFA lab and then sent back, and that obviously is a time-consuming exercise. So we give, for those low-risk countries, a special dispensation. If, however, there's a secondary reason which causes Port Health to express some concern, then there will be the requirement for there to be testing either here in Barbados on arrival or subjected to a period of quarantine until such time as any of the health issues that might have arisen or about which you may have some concern have been clarified. Ladies and gentlemen, as we go forward, as I said to you, the reality is that we are trying to reopen the country's tourism business in a sensitive manner and in a manner which allows for there to be business activity on one hand and the protection of people's personal health and safety on the other. The Prime Minister mentioned the tourism reboot plans and operations which are still being formulated, but I can say to you candidly that what we're trying to do is to make sure that there is a feel once again of the activities that this country has become accustomed to, especially during this time of the year, across the island. Obviously, we cannot now have Kadooment, we cannot have crop over as we would traditionally know it. But we can have parties, and we can enjoy music, and we can enjoy entertainment. But we must do so, as the Attorney General just indicated, in a sensible and health safety way. And so therefore, we've identified some areas which will be immediately targeted for refreshing of the tourism product, first of all, uplifting of the image of the area for the purposes of tourism and entertainment, secondly, and also to recognize that as we re-enter the global business of tourism, we have to do so in a way in which we are now selling Barbados to not only to Barbadians, but to the rest of the world as being an area which is considerably more upbeat and lively. St. Lawrence Gap is one such example. And so as recently as yesterday, Cabinet would have passed or approved a paper which allows us now to focus on the refurbishment in many ways of St. Lawrence Gap, the improvement of the product in the gap, and dealing with some of the issues relating to cleanliness and relating to safety, relating to sanitation, et cetera, that we have kicked down the road for a long time and never properly confronted. Similar types of exercises will have to be dealt with in Whole Town and also in Oistins and also in the city of Bridgetown at one or two other locations, Baxter's Road being one of them. But I also want to say that we feel very strongly that the question of fetes and so on can be done, and the setup of fete at one location, or party, entertainment, performers, etc. at one location, and then we use Zoom in as a means of allowing people to focus on that exercise, participate on a big screen, but at a different location across the island. And in that way, we'll be able to transplant the activity of the party and the entertainment across Barbados to several districts and in several villages, on several playing fields, etc. at one time. So we plan to have a crop over without it being a traditional crop over, and I would want to thank you all very much.
Thank you, Minister. The Minister tried to tell you just now about fetting, but he don't know nothing about fetting. So let me repeat it properly for you. Look, after the 15th of July, there will be some opportunities for people to come and to be able to have some satellite zoom-in fetes. So 500 per pasture, 10 pastures, 12 pastures. How much, Mr. Chapman? 20 pastures. Why? Because they're separate. And therefore, they will allow for people to be able to rejoice and to be able to have a little rest. When we started this journey in June 2018, I told you, and I told the IMF and the international community, that before a long journey, people need a little breakfast. But on a long journey, people need a little rest too. And because people overwhelmingly adhered to these protocols, we are here. I thank you for truly that. And that this little rest is to give us the energy and the commitment to face whatever we have to face, because we have not effectively passed the moment where COVID is out of the world. And therefore, we have to learn to live with it. We don't even know ultimately if there will be a vaccine. We expect a therapeutic. Next week, I hope to have some other good news at a regional level to announce, and I look forward to that, which will help the region continue to be able to manage its capacity as we go ahead protecting lives and livelihoods. But we have, as Bajans, to work together to adhere to the remaining protocols, which Minister Simmonds and the Attorney General have announced today, and as Minister has said, to be our brothers and sisters' keeper. I've said, remember the brake and the accelerator. We will not be afraid to use it. And you know me, I will tell you straight, I will tell you as it is, but I will also do what is necessary to protect the people of this nation. We have to learn to live with it, and we have seen that the measures to lock it out completely have contraindications that are beyond what most of our countries can bear and what our families and our people can bear. The loss of jobs and the closure of businesses will be far more devastating in the long run than what we can do. We want to create, my friends, an environment that people want to visit, or indeed, and I know the Minister will be working on this with the Minister of Immigration, to announce arrangements shortly that will allow people to come to Barbados to work, to rest, and to play from here, sending their work back to the countries wherever they are for an extended period of time during COVID-19. Why? Because we know that this is one of the best places on earth to be and to remain, because of the care with which we will take to protect the people of this nation and those who are here on island with us. And we want also to be able to give them an opportunity to provide them, therefore, with that longer period of time, because if you're working from home in the States, or you're working from home in England, or you're working from home in Canada, you could work from home here if your employer allows it, or if you're in a position so to do. And given that tourism is not only about hotels, I've also asked last week for the Ministry of Tourism to work with the Ministry of Youth and the Ministry of Culture to be able to give us a program that will allow us to pay for many of our children through the summer camps or the clubs to which they belong, to visit some of our premier tourism attractions over the course of the next few months, particularly over the summer, so that we may assist, one, in teaching our children about what we have on island, but two, helping those facilities to remain open. In addition to those who belong to summer camps or those who belong to clubs, I'm also saying for the rest of those families who can do it on their own, I invite you to take and to visit as many of our sites. How many people have been to Harrison's Cave? How many people have been to to the museum and to the different sites that people go to on island? We need to show that we can protect our assets, our attractions, and do it by first and foremost allowing our young people and our children to learn about them so that they can nurture them and promote them and appreciate their importance to their heritage here in Barbados. And we must always, as I say, remember that the Forest Tourist is a Bajan, and to that extent, we can keep open many of these enterprises. So, this is the journey. It's just a different leg. As I said, that we need to give people some rest on this long journey. I know that we can do it. And while there may be no formal crop over, as KERRIE said, there will be an opportunity for people to be able to pull down and rest themselves and to be able to get through. I ask people to continue to remain calm, to remain focused, to recognize that mentally, this is little respite is what we need. Similarly, do not drop your guard. The mask, most of the time, please wear it. And certainly where there is no opportunity for physical distancing, wear it. The washing of your hands, the use of hand sanitizer, the physical distancing of 1 meter now, all of these are things that will every day, each hour, each minute, protect you and protect those around you. For those who are going to be coming home to their families, if you know that you're going into an environment with a lot of people, we ask you to consider staying somewhere else. We ask you even, and I've asked the Minister of Tourism to also make sure that there are some affordable deals for Bajans who may not be in a position to stay at home, but who may want other opportunities to be able to stay while at the same time recognizing, because for the first few days after, we still need you to be exceedingly careful and to monitor. Will we be able to stop another COVID case in Barbados? No. Will we be able to manage them? Yes. Do we have the confidence, as Jeffrey said, that a journey 3 months ago that was unwalked is now a journey which we understand the bends in the road, we understand the ascent of the hill, we understand the steep descent coming down. And I believe that if we can remember, as I've said always from this platform, with God on our side, we have no doubts nor fears to the task, Barbadians, of rebuilding our country and ensuring that we move to the next stage of this journey. And I ask you, please, please, if there are concerns, share them with us. Mr. Chapman, I hope that the camera shows Mr. Chapman's face, because people must know that just like Mr. Carter is the COVID czar, this is the gentleman in charge of the COVID monitoring unit, and he, with the other environmental health officers and the Ministry of Labour officials, will be our first eyes, along with Mr. Carter and others. Those managing the quarantine facility for now will get their respite, Minister. And I trust and pray that those of you on the EOC, I'm asking you, please, take 3-4 days off. No meetings for the next 3-4 days. I'm saying it in front of everybody. They have been meeting every day since January. And I think the rest of Barbados would want me to say, job well done. Any questions?
Good afternoon,
State your name, Barry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Barry Ali from the Nation. Can you give us an indication in terms of our testing capacity and capability of the PRC tests? Since in the next few months we're going to be probably having to test more people. What is our capacity now? Do we have to reorder?
We have over 30,000 kits and the supporting mechanisms necessary. We have orders for increased machinery. I'm also investigating some other options, and as I said, I have a major announcement to make next week, so leave me the opportunity and space so to do. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, Prime Minister. Michael Phillips from the Barbados Advocate. You mentioned, sorry, I think it was Minister Simmons that had mentioned that on coming in, if you do test positive for COVID-19, you will go into one of our facilities. I understand that that would be the case for a local coming home, but at whose expense if the person is not a resident or citizen of Barbados?
The Barbados government has always treated emergency cases as emergency cases. We don't stop and ask where the money is before you give somebody the opportunity to be able to live, and we will continue to do that. With respect to the cases, we are also looking at something, and it's probably too early to speak, but for those who are asymptomatic, we're also looking at another type of isolation facility that may more suit some of them. But once you get a certain past a certain level of sickness with symptoms, one place and one place alone, Harrison's Point. Okay?
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Randy Bennett from Barbados today. You mentioned that...
Sorry, and just let me say that if you stay asymptomatic in that other facility that we want to have, you'll pay. But if you are acute, then the government of Barbados takes care of you to save your life.
You mentioned that beginning next month, there will be some flights from the U.S. Was there any consideration given to barring the U.S. travelers from visiting Barbados concerning the COVID situation there?
No, I think I said earlier that the first flight was to have been American Airlines on the 2nd of July, and that we have deliberately postponed that to the 5th of August, because we recognize that after you have a situation and a flare-up, based on the advice of the Ministry of Health, you actually need at least a month to begin to see if they take the right measures to be able to minimize the risk. So we will not, and you will notice that it is primarily other states. New York's trajectory is where? Where is it? Right down to the bottom. So that we will continue to watch, but we will have no interaction for another, today is what date? The 26th of June? What did I announce for the first flight from the US? 26th of July. And from Miami, the 5th of August. So I hope that answers your question, my brother. Any more questions before we go?
One question, Prime Minister. Minister Simmons would have mentioned the probability of some visitors without health certification having to do tests here. Will that require them to pay for that test, or that will be provided by the government?
Any tests that we give at the Concord Experience will be free. Any tests that are done at a tourism satellite testing center for tourists or Bajans, you have to pay for. So pick your choice. If you want to stay at the Concord Experience and wait for the results and everything, that's free.
Has the unit price been determined for that test?
Yes, the unit price is $150 US.
Yes.
$150 US. Okay? But once you are on the precincts of Grantley Adams Airport, Bajan or tourists, you come in there, free. If you want to go to the hotel so that you can sit back and do whatever you want to do, you got to pay there. Okay? Any other questions? May I use this opportunity, please, to you from the Advocate. You've lost your owner, Sir Anthony Bryan, and I'd like to extend my sympathy to the staff and people of the Barbados Advocate, and to you at the Nation, Barry, and to the Nation family. The loss of Christophe is one of the things that has hurt me more than most things recently. I knew him as a young boy. His father has been my resident beat officer for most of my career in the community which I represent. And as I said in Parliament the other night, we have to come to grips, and I know the Attorney General and the Minister of Health are firmly of the same opinion as me, that we have to come to grips with mental health in this country. We cannot continue to push it under a carpet. We need to discuss it in our families. We need to discuss it in our workplace. We need to discuss it publicly in our country, because any life loss as a result is tragic. And then, of course, there is the life of the person who is enduring the mental health problems themselves. That is equally tragic. So please extend to your colleagues within the profession, and generally to all of the media here, our great loss, because most of us know that Christophe would have been here this morning with us if he could have been. So God bless him. Okay.
Just one question.
You're now batting outside the crease, Barry.
Don't let it go past.
It depends.
There has been some push. This is a question for you as chairman of KERRIE. There has been some pushback from some corners in Guyana in response to your comments about the disappointment with some things that would have occurred within the last week or so. Would you like to respond to the persons who have been a little critical of your comments?
Now, the truth hurts. I have nothing more to say. The truth hurts. But what we must never do in CARICOM is avoid the truth and avoid our principles. Thank you very much and have a pleasant day.